Hi, I'm Lindsay.
Hi, I'm Christy, and we work with Globe International.
Working with missionaries, we hear stories of the struggles, the humor, God's goodness, and a little side of crazy.
Hey, that's who we are.
This is Crazy Missionary Stories.
Hello and welcome back. Today we have special guests Judy and Danny Armstrong, who are currently serving on the lead team here at Globe International, and they were serving on the mission field for 15 years. So, let's start out with what you're doing at Globe International.
Go right ahead.
We're currently directors of interns, so we are responsible for caring for brand new missionaries. And we also serve on the member care team, so we also have several missionaries that we relate to on a monthly basis, just checking in on them, seeing how they're doing.
I just want to throw this out there because right before we actually started recording, we were talking. And so how long do we say you've been in ministry? You were 15 years on the field, 23?
We've been in ministry over 50 years.
Over 50 years.
Yeah.
But you've been with Globe here in the U.S.
We've been with Globe here in the U.S., what did we say, 23 years?
We've been back off the field.
Yeah, 23 years.
So we've actually been serving with Globe since 1986.
Since 86.
38 years.
Yeah.
Wow. I almost want to ask you, Lindsay, what year you were born, but I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to do it.
Hey, come on, I don't care.
Okay, what year were you born?
1995.
95.
No, I was born in 51, 1951, not 18. 1951.
I'm glad you clarified that.
Some days I'm not so sure, Lindsay. I do remember my name, and it's helpful sometimes to have a name tag. All you have to do is just glance down.
Not for other people, but for yourself.
Yeah.
Oh, that's great. Well, it's so great to have you guys here today. I'd love to hear some stories.
Yeah, so how about we start out with your call to ministry or missions?
I was actually born again June 19th, 1970. So, you can do the math on that too, but it's a long time. But, and honestly, I was an adult and been raised in church, all that kind of thing, but really came face to face with the reality that, first of all, that I was really lost and going to hell. Came to that, real realization. Honestly, the day before, I've spent a whole 24 hours, really coming to grips with the fact that I was lost and going to hell.
How did that happen?
Well, I don't know.
You were almost just tormented.
Well, yeah.
For 24 hours.
And I was born, Christian parents, and went to church all my life, 3 times a week, that kind of thing, in the South. So all of that. But so, I really deceived. I thought that I was okay because of that. Mm-hmm. And, mom and dad were Christians, so I sort of inherited that. Yeah. Mm-hmm. But that's not how it works, we all know. So that, it was actually in a series, it was a revival meeting, but it was a little different for us in that it was a neighboring church, another denomination actually, but there was a real move of God in that community during that time. In a rural community in Mississippi, but there was going on a real move of God in that. So, neighboring church, they were having these revival meetings, and folks from my home church, we went over there. A bunch of us did, and actually during that week, a bunch of us from my home church really came to grips with the reality of salvation during that week too, and we accepted that gift of eternal life. So anyway. The day before, and the pastor preached from Romans for 2 weeks. It was one of those where, 1 week was extended another week. A bit unusual for the time, but preaching from Romans and just the reality of the truth that's there in Romans that really got to my heart, and just a conviction of the Holy Spirit. And as I said, I really came to that realization that I was lost, and that I was going to hell without Christ. And that was, a difficult 24 hours of really, about 24 hours of really just coming to grips with that. And I was actually in summer school at the school where I later enrolled full time and where Judy and I met. But, and I remember, I'm going way long on this.
That's okay.
Anyway, I remember thinking, because I was driving to school and back, and on both of those trips that day, I was crying out to God, Lord, just save me here in the quiet of the car, just save me here. And I knew in my heart that I wasn't going to tell anybody. So
You weren't going to tell anybody.
yeah. So I just, because everybody thought I was a good kid, and I was mean as a Dickens. But, anyway,
You didn't want anybody to know that you needed saving.
That's exactly it. The pride coming up, all of that shame, everything coming up there. So it's like coming to grips with all this stuff. And so that didn't happen. But went back to the church that night. It really gone because there was a singing group from a college, near there I wanted to hear, and then got sort of hooked into it. But anyway, that night went back. And again, the pastor preached from Romans. I don't even remember the passage that he preached from that night, but it was like, I was this, we used to say under conviction, it was like that, it was gripping my soul. And and at the altar call, when he gave the altar call, finally, when he gave the altar call that night, I responded immediately.
You ran forward.
No, I didn't really run, but I responded immediately. I was running on the inside, but went up, and it was one of those moments where it turned around and faced the audience, and because it was several of us responded that night. And it was a small country church. Anyway, when I turned around and looked at the folks there in the congregation, I guess everybody there I knew, they knew me, knew the family, all those kind of things. So I look back and I had this wonder, I wonder how many folks in this little church tonight, and it was full, wonder how many in the same shoes that I was in, thinking they were okay, but never really come to grips with the reality of not being saved, first of all, and then reality of really accepting that gift of eternal life. Mm-hmm. And that was really the beginning of that call. Mm-hmm. So that long story to say that.
Yeah. So how old were you at that point? How old were you?
I was 19. Yeah.
And it was because of a revival that was going on in your community.
All of that, figured into that. Yeah, there was a lot going on. A lot of home meetings kind of thing. Sort of, just started up. And they were and real interdenominational kind of. Anyway, so then that just kept on moving. And shortly after that was when I did make public that call to ministry. Mm. And as I've joked about before, the only thing I knew about a call to ministry at that time, you either preached or you led singing. And I knew I wasn't going to fit in leading singing. Because,
why not? Can we hear?
It was a cappella.
Can we hear, Sam?
Moving right along with it. So didn't think that was going to work. So the only option that I saw at the time was to preach. So I did. And so that was the time of really making that part public. Mm-hmm. And then later, the real call to missions came in there. Really just Judy and I met and got together on that.
So how did you two meet?
We were both going to a little Baptist college in Mississippi. And
called Blue Mountain College.
Yes, and actually at the time it was a girls' school.
Oh, really?
However, they allowed ministers, people who were studying for the ministry or music ministry could go there. Yeah. Men could go there doing that.
We were special.
Yeah. So there
Very
were
special men for these women.
Guys in a women's college.
They were very deliberate about the men they brought around. That was smart.
A great place for a guy to find a wife.
A lot of dads probably sent their wife or their daughters there, knowing they were going to meet
pastors.
Yeah, they'd be.
Yeah. So, but we didn't meet. It was a very small college, but we didn't really meet until our sophomore year. And in my freshman years when I got saved, and I was the same as Danny, I'd grown up in church all my life, and even joined the church, answered all the questions the right way because I knew, but there was never a transaction between me and Christ until my freshman year, and I realized that. And so I, committed my life to Jesus, and we were both serving on what was then called the Baptist Student Union Council. And so that's how we met in the beginning of our sophomore year, right? And we got to be friends. It's just kind of hung out together for a while, and that led to more.
Going out for coffee, a lot of coffee.
Yeah.
Her roommate really got on my case because she would come back. She was all hyped up on coffee and wouldn't go to sleep.
Oh no!
Wanted to talk. So we actually started dating February maybe of my sophomore year. Yeah, sophomore year. And then we got married in October, my junior year. So
Wow.
yeah, so it's pretty fast. But when we were dating, we would talk about missions because both of us kind of had a leaning that direction. But we kind of thought we'd go to a Hispanic country because I was studying Spanish. That was my major at the time.
I did Spanish in high school.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we just
That's all
thought
we
that
knew.
made sense. That just made sense.
Yeah.
But anyway, it was really interesting. We ended up down here in Pensacola at Liberty Bible College, and the whole time we were in Bible college, we didn't study for missions. We studied for pastoral ministry. And yet every year during the missions conference, our hearts would get stirred up again about missions, and we would think, well, maybe someday we'll do that. Maybe someday we'll do that. So we graduated, Danny graduated from here, and we went to Birmingham, Alabama for a little while, tried to start a couple of churches there, mission churches, and it didn't work. And so then we ended up in North Carolina. Danny was the assistant director of the Christian Retreat Center there. We got involved in a little country church, just, as members, and I became the chairman of their missions committee. And so missions kept coming back around again. And then things started coming across his desk at the retreat center about the disparity between ministers for the United States and particularly ministers for the Muslim population. And it was like
world,
so, I mean, like we were in a little Baptist church, little non-denominational church. And in that church, there were 5 ordained ministers. Wow. They weren't all on staff. There was only one pastor on staff. But we're saying there's 5 ordained ministers here. And at that time, what was it? 1 for every how many Muslims?
One Christian worker for every 1 million Muslims.
Wow.
And so God used that to start working on our hearts and giving us a heart for unreached, particularly Muslim countries. And we had friends who were serving in a particular country in Southeast Asia at that time, and they came back to visit, doing kind of an itineration, and we felt like that was where we were supposed to go. So that's how we got called to the particular country that we went to in the beginning.
So you both kind of collectively felt the call and discussed it together. And
I don't do anything without discussing it with you.
That's very smart.
That's wisdom right there. That's a nugget.
And we had some debt. That really it wasn't something we had carelessly done, but we were working on paying it down. But when we felt like God was calling us, we said, Lord, we're willing to go, but we have this debt. Looking at it in the natural, it's going to take us a long, long time to pay this debt off. So if you want us to go, you're going to have to help us. Wow. And so within 2 months, through some circumstances, God paid our debt completely off. Wow. And 6 months after we said we'd go, we had our funds and we went.
Goodness.
That's amazing.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, then,
When you say you had your funds, you're saying you were fully funded.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, we were fully funded at the time, which was basically just get all the money you can and get your airfare.
And then go.
Gotcha.
So,
Thank you for clarifying the difference.
Yeah.
that's right.
At that time, they didn't put a lot of requirements on us. But we did have an adequate.
We did.
Yeah,
we always
support.
we were blessed.
Yeah.
So were you with Globe when
we
you
were.
sent out?
Yes.
Okay.
So you've been with Globe from the beginning then?
Yes.
Yes.
Wow.
So
Okay.
how did you come to find Globe?
Well, see, because we graduated from
Liberty.
Liberty Bible College,
Right here.
Globe was what we knew. And so, of course, when we felt like we needed to go, that was natural for us. We were going to go through Globe.
Okay.
We knew the folks and the missionaries that Judy had talked about that came, back and that, had something for us, had something to do with us going where we did. They were with Globe too.
Wow.
So we've known a bunch. And Judy mentioned the mission conferences here. And Faith Promise, was a big thing. So it still is in a lot of places. But then, it was really big. And, all the students at the Bible college, were raising their hand, I'll give this amount, all that kind of stuff. So, practically all of us really went out on the limb, to do that. And God was faithful, so many times we saw that. It was amazing.
So you went to Southeast Asia right away. That was very first.
Yeah, we spent the first 3 months in one country with a Globe missionary that was there because we wanted to go to a neighboring country, but it was, we didn't know how to get in there. And you had to be sponsored in, and we didn't know anybody, to go with. But this missionary with Globe did. He had met a guy in the country we wanted to be part of, and he was trying to start a Bible training school for his people. And that was what we felt like we were supposed to do in the beginning. And so he introduced us to the indigenous pastor in that country. And Danny went over with the other missionary, and I didn't go.
Yeah.
He came back and he said, I got us a house and we're moving in November.
Oh,
Furnished-
that was nice. He
furnished
let you know. Yeah.
I thought you said you discussed everything with her.
He said he
I
learned.
told
He
you
said
I
he learned.
He brought back pictures, and it looked like a really cute house.
Oh, good.
And
Uh-oh, was it?
Yeah. Well, pictures can be deceiving, and it wasn't exactly what I was expecting. The biggest thing that helped me was we had gone on a 2-week trip to Mexico with Liberty Bible College, and then, so he said it's a lot like Mexico.
And
So
some of the
at
places
least
we
I
went
had
in
a-
Mexico at that time, were a bit
Village.
rugged,
Yeah.
villagey.
A little rougher.
So I had a
rougher,
pretty good picture in my mind of what to expect, so I wasn't totally shocked, just a little bit.
So it was village life that you were going to?
We were.
Or-
It's funny. We were in a city, but we
Yeah.
we're on the edge of the city, and that city at that time that was a city. It was more like a big village,
Okay.
and the area we were in was right on the edge of the rice fields, and so we had rice fields all around us.
Wow.
And the first house we lived in was on a little dirt road, and it was very simple, and the people were just very simple people. Our neighbors across the road had a dirt floor, no indoor plumbing, and no electricity. However, they had a TV that they ran off a car battery.
Oh.
Yep.
So
They did.
we had a floor in our house, but we didn't have a TV,
Yeah,
so our
TV.
kids went over to their house to watch TV.
They would run it off the car battery, and then when it needed it, they would take it somewhere and get it recharged. And do it again.
That's the way to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you lived in the country.
Well, it was kind of like it was the city,
country, though.
but it was like
is the city.
there. It was had a rural feel to it.
It
I
did.
think And
So here's a question that really has nothing to do with missions, but I'm just curious as to what it was like in the living conditions. Rice fields are always full of water.
Yeah.
Were there lots of mosquitoes
Oh,
then?
yeah.
So you had just tons of mosquitoes.
yeah, and the house that we moved into didn't have any screens on it. It just had shutters.
Yeah.
And so the first thing we did was we put screens on the windows because
Well, the shutters had screens, didn't they?
the shutters did have
They
screens.
did have screens.
So at night you could close them and it would, but the mosquitoes
Got
came in
out
in the
throughout
daytime
day.
and hid.
Yeah.
And so at
Oh,
night
yeah.
they just came out. And so actually we had a house helper and she would go in our
Part of her
our
daily
bedroom,
routine.
Yes, every night. And she would spray this spray that was a very oily.
Baygon.
Yeah, it was an oily.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
like a raid type of a thing,
Yes,
isn't it? Yeah.
And close our bedroom door so that the mosquitoes in our room would hopefully die. And then we had these little coils. You've probably seen them, Christy. And you light them.
Circular
And
things that burn.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
we would put it like down under our bed or near our bed. Of course, probably a hazard, but
You like had all these
Sounds
fumes
like
in
it.
your room
Yes,
all night
it
long.
was.
Yeah.
Yeah, they were had a definite odor to them.
Now it just makes my sinuses stop up. And
Yeah,
think
I
about it.
And so you slept with the windows and doors all closed.
Well,
Or did you
that's
have them
when we
open?
put the screens on
That's
the
when you
windows.
Well, the shutters had screen on it, so it got
Right.
some airflow, that
but
way.
not a lot.
No.
And we did have ceiling fans.
We
didn't
did.
have air conditioning. But
That
we had
helps with
ceiling
mosquitoes
fans.
too.
Oh yeah.
Keep the air moving.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
problem was when the electricity went off.
Yeah, because then you hear the zzz.
And the first year we were there, one of the generators were on the coast, and one of the generators was down, so we had rolling blackouts. And so we would have hours without electricity, and you never knew exactly when that was going to happen,
Yeah.
So, but it would be like the same time every day for a little while, then it would switch, and it would be a different time every day. So when the electricity went out, it was so hot, and I remember one of the things I did to cool off, I would take a pan of cold water and put my feet in it and just sit with my feet in a pan of cold water to try to
Cool
get
yourself
cool
down.
enough.
Till the water started boiling, then change.
That's right. Then you used it to cook.
It was actually a really good experience
was.
for us to live like that.
It was.
We were in that house for 3.5 years. It helped our language learning. It helped our understanding of the culture.
Oh, yeah.
It put us right out with the people. We didn't have a car, so we had to use public transportation. Yeah. And the public transportation at that point was little pedal taxi. You rode in a little sidecar, and then a bicycle rode you. And we would take that down to the main street and catch a little, it was kind of like a Suzuki, it might have been a Suzuki pickup with a cover over it. And you climb in that. Certain ones went certain places.
Different colors.
So
different
you would
stripes.
pile in that, and you would go where you were going
you had
as
to learn all
close
that.
as possible.
Yeah.
Then you either walk or you get another one of the pedal cabs, and
Wow.
they weren't made for Western people.
So they were short.
Yeah, we got in one day, and it started. Danny was sitting on the outside, and it started bringing the bicycle. We need to shift our weight a little bit.
That is so funny.
So I learned to sit on the inside, even though it wasn't necessarily appropriate.
Details.
Yeah. That poor person pedaling.
Especially up hills.
You should have been pedaling.
I know. It's
So when
many
you
things.
guys moved to Southeast Asia, did you have kids yet?
Yeah.
So how old were your kids at that time?
Our daughter was 6, and our son had just turned 12.
Oh wow.
So it was a little bit harder transition for him because of his age. Plus, our daughter was one of the, as a kid, she was going to talk, and she talked to everybody.
Still that way.
Yeah, and then our son was a little more reserved. So it worked out that he had two very good friends, nationals that he made friends with. They spoke some English, and so he didn't learn as much of the language as our daughter did. But our daughter would just get out and play, and she talked to the kids, and she learned the language. People said if they didn't see her, they thought that it was a native speaker because she spoke. But of course, she spoke the children's language, and she picked it up. But because she was a child, the neighbors would correct her.
Yeah.
When she said things wrong. They were reluctant to correct us, but they would correct her. And she went in and out of their houses just as a kid, you know. She even played at the mosque. That was one of her friends was the imam at the mosque. It was his daughter.
Wow.
And so they let her play down there, you know. And so she got to experience a lot of stuff that we didn't even know about till later, you know. So she became enculturated a lot.
She was in on the preparation of a body for burial.
Little girl down
It
the
wasn't
road.
an embalming; it was just putting spices on and wrapping.
Wow.
And
And they
involved with that.
Yeah, she was down there when they were doing it, so she came back and
We
told
didn't
us
know
all
about that.
about
We
it.
didn't. Well,
We didn't
she-
know she was there.
No, we didn't know she was there until later.
But this little girl was only 6, I think, and the best we can assume is that she had a ruptured appendix.
From what they
She
said.
woke up in the night with a really, really bad stomachache, and she died. And she was a little girl that would stand on the side of the road, and when our family walked by, she would say, "Hello, Joy," because Joy's our daughter's name, and so she just thought we were
She
all
knew
Joy.
Joy.
So she would say,
Oh.
"Hello, Joy, hello, Joy."
Aw,
So
sweet.
yeah,
Yeah, that was
so
hard.
that was kind of a real close encounter with death for
yeah,
our daughter,
for all of us.
especially. But
yeah, especially for Joy.
because there they would just, especially the Muslims, like bury the same day if they can, and so they would have the body. It didn't matter what was Muslim or Christian, but the body were no funeral homes and there was no embalming, so they would just prepare the body, and the body would be in the house, and everybody would come and sit around to comfort the family and sit with the body until burial. And so that was different.
And did you guys go to those?
We did.
Yeah.
We did. One of the embarrassing stories that I can tell about one of those It actually was when the little girl died. So we wanted to go pay our respects, but we had only been in the country a short time. So I don't know what is the custom? What do you wear? You know. And so our house helper, we didn't speak the language very well. She was trying to tell me just to wear a sarong, you know. And so I had gotten this very fancy outfit the top and the sarong match, and so I thought, well, that makes sense. I should wear that. So I walked down the road in it, and everybody's, you know, looking at me, going, oh, it's so pretty, you know. Well, come to find out, that's the kind of outfit you wear for like a celebration,
festive occasion.
Like a wedding, or
not a funeral.
Right. But they were so kind.
They were.
They were so glad we were there.
And they probably loved that you were trying.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
But I was humiliated later.
Aww.
You know, so.
Yes.
Oh, that's one of those faux pas.
Yeah. Oh,
You just feel like a child.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, you just feel
Well, that's the thing about going into a new culture. I know you know this, Christy, but it's like all of the customs and the cues, the social cues, they're all different.
Oh, yeah.
And you don't know,
Unspoken
and you have to learn that.
Yeah.
And thankfully, the people were very gracious. You know, well, we're Westerners. They knew, we didn't know, you know. And people forgive a lot of things if they know you care about them, you know. And that's what the pastor's wife at the church always told me. She said, they know you love them. That's the important thing. They know you love them. You know? So you can make some mistakes, but as embarrassing as they are.
You have any more
Crazy stories?
Too many to tell. But Danny's got the best one.
I do.
Yeah. His language goof was funny.
Oh, and this is one of those things that just, one of the things that makes it funny is that it grew over the years.
It did.
I mean, it
Well,
just
The story
changed.
changed.
I understand that the pastor that we served with, he was a joker, and he loved to laugh.
he did.
And so
Laughed a lot.
he got wind of this story, which happened privately.
It did. It happened with our language helper. In the privacy of our language lesson that day, I was telling a story, and you know, from Scripture, when Paul, when he was led over the wall, you know, and escaped from the people, you know, that wanted to do him harm and all that. Yeah. Well, in the language, there's a word that's very close together for runaway or escape and give birth. So I mixed them up.
So is it tonal? Is that the difference? Or
No,
is
it's
it
not.
actual
It's
words?
just
A few
the
letters
word
difference.
itself. Like kitchen and chicken.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
You know,
Okay.
we know the difference.
Yeah.
We had, you know, a lot of our students in learning English, you know, they would mix those up.
Yeah.
And a lot of other words. But anyway, but this one, you know, instead of saying that Paul ran away or he escaped, you know, I really said that he gave birth to himself. Which is ridiculous, but it's funny.
And you were preaching, essentially, is what you were doing in what you were sharing?
No, I was just sharing this in our language lesson.
Okay.
It was just us. You know, I don't even know if you were in there. Were you?
I don't know, but I heard about it.
Well, she was the language helper. She was as much of a cut up as anybody. And she laughed and laughed and laughed. And she probably told you about it and laughed and laughed and laughed. Well, that day, she was actually going over to the pastor's house, and she was working with him at that time on his English. So she went over and she told that story to him. Well, then, of course, we heard about it. And then later, he told it from the pulpit.
Oh, no. He just shamed you.
It got bigger and bigger. And later, I mean, I'm talking about years later. We went after we had moved away and went back.
No way.
That story was still going, and it was like I preached that in front of a congregation. That's how it got told. And
What was your response when they would tell? I'm guessing you just laughed.
What else you did?
I know. You get upset. Laugh or cry, one of the two, right?
Which is one of the things, and I think some of us are
by personality, we're
Well, it's harder for us to laugh at ourselves.
yes, yeah.
And it's one of the things with language learning. If we don't laugh at ourselves, we're going to have trouble learning language, for one thing.
Yes.
And we're going to have a lot of heartache.
Yeah.
And a lot of anger that's going to come up.
Very bitter.
Oh.
Yeah.
You just have to know you're going to embarrass yourself at some point. The word for head and the word for coconut are another couple that are just very close. There's just a couple letters that get switched around. And so we played with those words, laughing about it because
In the family.
we would basically say, you're just a coconut head, or something like that. Well, so I'm telling the helper, she's going to the market, and I wanted to ask her to buy a coconut, only I said head. And of course, she just started laughing.
That's great.
The other funny language thing was, we didn't go to school because we didn't have the proper visa to go to a language school, and we didn't know how to get one. So we had a language tutor.
Yeah.
But when we first moved in there, we didn't know how to say hardly anything. And we knew how to say, what's this, what's that, basically. So we sort of inherited a house helper from a missionary couple that had lived there, and we actually we got their house.
Yeah, their house, their furniture, and
their dog, and their
dog.
Oh my goodness.
And so Danny got all that before I ever came over there, And our helper spoke very little English, which again was a help for our language learning. Yeah. However, I was trying to make a list for her to go to the market for us. So I got my dictionary out and found out how you said, carrots, blah, blah, blah. So I made this list. And so then she comes out with the list and starts asking me questions. Well, I didn't know what the questions were. I'm finally like, just go. And she kept asking me one particular question, and I don't understand. Finally, she looks at me in English. She goes, up to you.
Oh, cute.
But she knew that much English, and she said, up to you. It was so cute.
Very cute.
That reminds me of another story with her. Is that and she was a lot of fun too. And anyway, she was a real blessing in so many ways. But one of our trips back to the States, when we came back over there, we had brought some cornmeal.
Yeah.
Right? Because it was hard to find cornmeal. So Judy wanted to make cornbread or something. So anyway, had some cornmeal. So one day she baked this beautiful cake and brought it out, and it was all iced and all that kind of stuff. It was very good. We cut into it and realized that it was made with the cornmeal.
Ooh.
But
I said to her, "Oh, this cake is beautiful," and she said, "Oh, yes, ma'am. I used that special flour you brought from the U.S." I'm like, "Oh," and so I told the kids, I said, "No matter what it tastes like, you have to compliment her on it. We can't hurt her feelings."
She mixed it with flour too. So
So actually, the cake was quite good because she put a lot of flour in it. She put a lot of sugar, lots of eggs. And it just had that little bit of the corn tape. And it was actually very good. But I had to tell her because one of her friends was also a helper for one of our friends.
Colleague.
And they talked a lot.
Yep.
And so I thought, she's going to find out. She's going to be really embarrassed. So I just said to her, this is amazing. Because in the States, we don't normally bake cakes with this. But you did a really good job. And it turned out really well. You'll have to tell me how you did it. So that was, because I didn't want her to find out later and be really embarrassed that she used the wrong.
How long into your time there was that this incident happened?
That incident?
It was a little bit
further
along. It was a few years
Well,
because we had already moved into a different house.
Yeah, we
had. It was
had.
After
it was about
probably
4
about
years, probably.
4 years. Yeah.
I'm just amazed at your ability to roll with the culture and know you needed to protect her, and because she would receive that as she'd feel ashamed of, and embarrassed,
That's a big deal.
and that your heart was, no, I need to dress it in a way that she feels honored.
So we had learned a few things.
Yeah, that's amazing. That's a lot, and to be able to just in your daily life roll that into, this is how I need to respond. To me, that speaks volumes.
Yeah. You learn some things the hard way and make a few mistakes, and we were really blessed because the situation we were in, we had a wonderful indigenous pastor and his family, and they really took us under their wings and really protected us from a lot of things in the beginning, like food that we shouldn't eat and stuff like that. And
then I started sneaking around and eating stuff that she wouldn't approve.
The pastor's wife was a doctor, and so she was super careful about cleanliness and stuff, so she didn't want us to get sick, so she would not want us to eat in certain places that she knew weren't clean and all that. But they were just so gracious and kind, and we actually stayed with them for about 3 or 4 days when we first got to the country,
At least that long. Maybe
because the house we were moving into needed to be painted and stuff. So we stayed in their house, which was also very good because we were very dependent on them. And if you go in with all the answers, it's different. If you go in as a learner, which we didn't actually learn that kind of thing before we went.
You just kind of did it.
We just we were kind of forced into a situation that kind of made us naturally have to depend on them, But he had started over 30 churches out in the villages before we came. And then he had started having meetings in the city, but had not formally, formalized it as a church. So once they formalized it, a few of the people left, and he was left with a core of like 800 people to start a church, which isn't too bad.
No, that's great.
Yeah. His vision was to plant churches all over the country, and they wanted one in every province, at least one. And that's why he wanted to start the school, was to train church planters to plant churches. Wow. And they saw that vision fulfilled. They do now have churches in every province.
Wow.
Yeah, actually, that was fulfilled before he passed away. He passed away several years ago.
Okay.
But he saw the fulfillment of that part of his vision because there were churches out in all the province.
And what role did you guys play in that? You were involved with the school then? What was your part?
Well, I was officially the dean of the school, and actually, I taught more classes than anybody else. The pastor, and then some of his family, they taught various classes in the school too. So it was like an everyday kind of thing, preparation, and then going in the afternoon and evening for the classes. Because we designed the school from the beginning to accommodate those that worked full time, so they could work and come to school in the evening. And a lot of the students, were younger and they didn't have full time jobs, but they were kept very busy around the school. That was a part of it too.
So just this is a detailed question, but I'm assuming then you spoke in the local language when you taught, or did you teach in English?
That's a good question there, Christy. I did not speak in the local language.
You taught in English?
Yeah, and it was interpreted, and had a very good interpreter. He was actually the father-in-law of the pastor, and he was an excellent man. I delight to be around. He and I would sneak off and go to some of these little hole-in-the-wall places that his daughter, the pastor's wife, didn't know about, but got some good food that way.
And then
she would go off on her dad,
fuss at him.
Yeah.
But that was, he taught, and just to clarify, he taught in the beginning with an interpreter while he was learning the language.
Yes.
And then eventually taught.
Yes.
So both. You taught on your own as well.
Yes. Yeah. Because the school was started very quickly after we got there.
So you just jumped right in.
Yeah. And
which actually made language learning harder.
It was.
Which is it's not something we would advise. No, it's better to get the language first before you get involved in ministry, but we didn't have that opportunity.
Yeah,
but you were living right in the culture, so you were having a lot more interaction with the language than some.
And with the students, and a lot of the things, it was it was funny, but it was a blessing too in the long run, in that we learned a lot of the local language kind of stuff in ways that younger adults would express things. So, they got tickled at some of the things. Like in a message one time, I remember that I said something about referring to Judy, and I referred to her as my girlfriend.
Oh, As opposed to your wife.
Locally, I mean, it's locally,
Yeah.
you know, more
Yeah.
of saying she's my girlfriend.
Yeah.
And you know, people laughed.
Cute.
But it was actually, it was an endearing kind of thing too. It helped, you know, sort of bridge some of that gap a little bit.
Yeah.
And it was just the way that it happened with us. Because as you said, we did not go to another place for language school and then there, which happened a lot. Well, a number of our friends that did that, then they would come to our area to minister, and you know, and some of them would make comments to us about some of the local ways of saying things, and they had learned, you know, more of the proper
Academic
way to say it, but the local dialect, you know, the different, you know, nuances there, they were not really catching. So, you know, we didn't have that jump, you know, so it was good in the long run for us being where we were.
So did you have a tutor? How did you learn?
Yeah,
We
had
did.
a tutor.
Okay.
We actually wound up with about 2 or 3 different tutors that we had, which again was good to have some variety in the way that they approach things. It was good. It really helped us.
Yeah.
But the school, you know, back to that, as we were saying, you know, I taught a number of the classes, and I mean, did a lot of preparation for that, and wound up doing, you know, lesson plans for all of the classes, you know, the curriculum, all of that. We designed that, and but you know, the pastor and his family, they had a lot of input into that. And we really made sure that they had a lot of input into the students in the classroom, you know, and a lot of, especially with the pastor, because he was such an apostolic figure there that, you know, for them to get as much exposure to him as possible was what we wanted to see.
The area you guys were in, were they pretty open to hearing the Bible? Did you have any opposition to that?
We were primarily working with a tribal group that had been Christianized 100 years ago. And so there were a lot of churches, however, they hadn't really learned a lot of the basics and been discipled. And so a lot of the churches tended to mix animism, witchcraft, the local traditions that were rooted in animism were mixed in to the churches. And that was one of the things in the church that the pastor that we worked with, the ones he started, he was very adamant about not breaking with traditions that were not godly. They were based in, you know, paganism and things. So that didn't make him popular with some of the people, you know, because of that. So there was opposition, and a lot of times the younger people who came to the church had breaks with their family over that. Because, for instance, like in the marriage ceremonies, there were certain things they did during the ceremony that had their roots in paganism, and our church wouldn't allow that. And then, so that kind of caused issues with families sometimes. So, and most of the people who were coming to the Lord through the church were from a particular tribal group, and so we in our time there in that country, we didn't have a lot of interaction with other religions, because there were just 1 or 2 from other religions, you know, here and there that would come in. But it was more from the Christianized tribal group that we were working with.
Was your whole time there in that particular country spent with the Bible school, or did you do other things too?
The time that we were there, the first 6 years, then we were denied a visa, so we had to leave.
Okay.
So then we came back and forth a lot after that, and initially we worked a lot with the Bible school, still continuing with them. Somebody was able to come in behind us and continue teaching in the school. Excuse me, but then later we really shifted our focus to much more of the unreached groups that were there.
We ended up moving to a nearby country, neighboring country, and from there we worked into another country that had a large Muslim population. All of the countries we were in had a large Muslim population, but our focus shifted. And that was one of the things that the Lord was beginning to do in us before we lost our visa, was He was beginning to open our eyes to see that we're rubbing shoulders every day with Muslims, but the gospel wasn't crossing those barriers. And not to take away from what was happening in the tribal group, it was very good and very exciting, and people were coming to the Lord, but the Lord sort of shifted our focus again to unreached peoples, particularly Muslims. And then so when we shifted to another country, our focus became reaching more the unreached people group near us, rather than being as much in a Christianized group. So it was just a different season for us.
And there again, it was, I guess God's sovereignty was working in us being denied the visa, because it would have been difficult to make that shift otherwise.
Yeah.
I mean, like you said, we were seeing a lot of things happening. I mean, it was like every service, every time there were scores of people that were responding to altar calls. And it was, I mean, repeatedly, I would stand out to the side, and it was like, I never became accustomed to that response. I mean, I oftentimes stand over there and weep because of seeing that. And again, some of the things that we intimated earlier is that because there was so much animism, that a part of every altar call was giving up your charms and your amulets and all of that stuff. So
witchcraft. And,
all of that.
Wow.
So those would be thrown up on a platform or something, and destroyed, and so all of that was a part of that. That was, and that was really a part of the salvation prayer that the pastor led them through. Was that break with the animism. So it was, powerful time, and some powerful healings. I mean, my goodness, I saw people, come in on crutches and walk out without them.
Really?
And come in wheelchairs and walk out pushing the wheelchair. Those kind of things. And blind eyes open, and the deaf hearing. I mean, it was just like that was just what happened normally.
Yeah. Why would you want to leave something like that?
Exactly. Yeah. So it would have been.
So you were.
As I said, it would have been difficult to really leave that and to get to the focus that we believed that God was leading us to.
Yeah.
Without that kind of thing of, okay, you can't live in this country any longer, you got to leave.
Now, did you have to learn a new language and culture when you went to the new place?
No.
New country? No.
The neighboring country, a lot of people spoke English, but then I guess that language of education at that point was actually 80% the same as the language we spoke in the other country. Wow. So when we spoke the language we had learned, they knew we were speaking the other language, but they understood us. And there were just certain words that they used that we didn't use in the other country, or we used in the other country that meant something different in that country. So it wasn't a big difference, That's it.
Maybe a little similar to Portuguese and Spanish.
Okay.
Or that might be able to compare that.
Or even what I'm learning now is Spanish and Spanish from one country to the other. It actually changes. The words are different in some countries.
Yeah.
A lot of that, but there's so many things about all of that time that was amazing.
When you say that, what are you thinking of? More like miracles, or just seeing the Lord work in you guys? And
the way that God was moving there, and like Judy was saying, that it was primarily, what we would consider, I guess, traditional Christians that had never really come to faith. Never really.
They were having encounters, kind of like what you had when you came to the Lord.
Yeah.
Except maybe even more or less of an understanding of what the gospel was.
Because there's a lot of mixed with animism.
Yeah.
Okay. It was so watered down.
So if you were born into a Christian family, you were considered a Christian.
Right.
If you were born into a Muslim family, you were Muslim.
Hindu.
Yeah, same
Hindu.
thing.
Okay.
And so just because somebody was a Christian in name didn't mean they had any idea who Jesus was or what being born again meant. So,
Well, and to the extent that there were there were Christian witch doctors and Muslim witch doctors.
Really?
That they had offices, practices that they had openly, on the street. And some of them even specialized in broken bones or internal medicine and things like that.
Goodness.
But it was witchcraft. And it was very clear.
and it wasn't very unusual at all for even a Christian pastor, if
Right.
he got sick, his first recourse would be go to the witch doctor.
So it was probably then very, how do I want to say, it was different that the pastor that you were working with was
Yes.
so adamant about
Yes.
breaking that.
Yes.
But wonderful for the church that it was clear cut and it was clearly Christian and not mixed, but not common
Right.
for the local area. So he was already different before working with you guys.
Oh yeah, very much so. Yeah, we came in into the ministry that he was already leading very effectively.
We just really felt cared for and loved by that family. They were
Yeah.
very special to us, and our
Still are.
son and their son were the same age, and so that was one of our son's best friends.
Yep.
And he actually, the whole family spoke some English, good English actually, and so that really helped our son because he was older. And then there was another guy from the church who was also one of his friends, and they hung out and got in trouble. That things we didn't know they did until many years later.
Yeah, many years later, actually, the pastor's son was telling us some of the
Yeah.
stories.
Oh, not even your
Oh,
own
my
son.
goodness.
Instinct back. He was like, "Oh yeah, that time, blah 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 blah." I was like, "Oh my goodness," because they knew if we knew, or his parents knew, that we'd be like down on them, and they wouldn't be running around like they did.
Yeah, they wouldn't.
It was just mischief, you know. But it was.
Yeah, like riding through a rice field, and one of their one of their bicycles fell in a well.
And so then they one of them lowered the other one down to get the
To
bicycle
get the bike and
out.
push it back out, and then get him out of there. I think it was our son that went down in the well, wasn't it?
no.
Yes.
I think it was him.
And they rode through the neighborhood clothesline and tore the clothes down. Our neighbors were chasing them. We didn't know about all
Sounds
that
like they had a
till
lot of
years
fun.
later.
It's harmless mischief.
Yeah, pretty much.
Probably not to the neighbors who had to rewash all their clothes.
And how
Could've
hard
been a
it
lot
is to
worse.
wash clothes there.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, and back to one of the things about the institute, the school. In the early years, it grew very quickly. I mean, the first year we had 21 students, something like that.
Something like that.
And so the pastor and I interviewed all of the candidates. And it was really that first year that we were interviewing everybody that was applying for the school. And this one guy that came, and he was applying, and he told us a wild story about, how he came to faith by climbing up a tree and falling out of the tree and crying out to God, that if he'd save him, that he would serve him the rest of his life, kind of thing. And, went on about some of that. And it was like, wow, I did wow. And, some of the other things, he just seemed very immature and everything. And I had some real questions. And so, my inclination, and, I was very frank with the pastor, that I don't think we should take him. I don't think he would really work out in the school. He said, "Oh no," he grinned real big. "Oh no," I said, "Let's take him. I think he'll learn." And we did, and he wasn't, so academically inclined. Some of the other students weren't either. Of course, I was coming from a U.S. perspective on that. I had to learn a lot of things, but that guy has been, over the years, been one of the most effective church planners in the whole bunch.
Wow.
And
Wow.
it was like, okay, I don't know much.
Wow.
So that was a great learning experience for me
Yeah.
in seeing that, and in seeing the wisdom of the pastor that I was working with, and that he saw some things there that I couldn't see, and he was right about this guy, right about a lot of things like that, a lot of people. I mean, there were some that of course, that didn't make it for one reason or another, but they all had somebody behind them in the pastor that was really going to push them forward and going to encourage them in every way that he could, and that was good for us.
So I think now's a good time to ask you to tell us your craziest story, if you have one.
I mean,
that
this
stands
is
out.
crazy missionary stories.
Well,
I mean,
we've been there for several years. I don't even know how long, and we were invited to go along on a youth retreat, and was up in the mountains. Nice place, nice venue, really good. And don't go too far with that nice on that, but it was cool, which was good to get out of the heat of the city where we were. So it was up in the mountains a bit, so it's cool, nice. Had plenty of food, and all that. And the emphasis of the conference was just encouraging all of them to be faithful to the Lord, and to go forward, share the gospel with their friends, all that. So that was good. One afternoon, during a break, Judy and I went for a walk with several of the young adults and students, and we went down this little trail, there in the mountains. So we were walking down this trail, just laughing and talking and everything. Finally, as we walked down the trail, we went around to where a water buffalo had left his mark, and walked around that, and one of the students said, and pointed to one of the girls in the group, and he said, or she said, I don't remember, she said, her people eat that.
There's two different tribes.
Yeah, two different tribes.
oh,
Two different tribes. And she said, no, we don't. She said, yes, you do. And then we got the story that with that particular group, one of their dishes for like big, celebrations, weddings or big gatherings, was to cook a water buffalo. And one of the things that they did was they chopped up the insides, the intestines, with the contents.
oh my goodness.
And the thing she was saying, which you think about it a little bit, maybe it makes a little sense. Not really to me, but that that's just grass and stuff that's just chewed up. I mean, so it's it's not been eliminated, so it's not like we think of that was laying on the ground. So anyway, but it's still. And she said, yeah, it smells horrible when it's cooking, but it sure is good.
Oh, that sure tastes good, huh? Oh my goodness.
Did you ever try that dish?
Not that we know.
Not that we know.
Wow.
We had a lot of things out in some of the villages that we learned quickly. Don't ask. Eat what's set before you. The good missionary thing, but just don't ask. You don't need to know really what all that is. And anyway,
It goes down better if you don't know. what
there
it
you go.
is.
Exactly. So that's sort of one of my worst food story memories. Yeah. What was the other one?
Oh, well, we were talking about our house helper doing the laundry, because we didn't have a washing machine. All our laundry was done by hand on a little concrete block out in the courtyard behind our house. And so, she would like slam the laundry down and use a brush to scrub it, and she did it. She got it real good and clean.
Uh-huh.
But Danny at that time wore V-neck T-shirts, And by the time we went back to the States for a furlough, his V was down to his waist. And the underwear, his underwear, the elastic was so worn out, he had to hold it up with his belt. You know.
So the first thing after we got back to the States, go somewhere and get some new underwear. First stop.
That's
Yeah.
great.
Yeah, and also the bluing stuff.
Yeah, they used in their laundry. They would use these little cubes. I think they used to use them in the States a long time ago, but they were bluing cubes, and they were blue, and it was to help your laundry get white, like bleach, Only she used too much, and so everything white became blue. So our son was in his preteens, and he's wearing white tube socks, but they're blue, which didn't make him real happy.
Yeah, almost like a glow-in-the-dark kind of blue.
Yeah. So, it got to the point that Danny said to her, "You've got to stop using that bluing." And she'd say, "Oh, I don't do that." And then you find the little blue cube.
There was. Everything was blue.
Finally, he just said, "Okay, if you use that again, we're going to fire you."
Oh,
I think I tried to soften that a little bit,
but
she finally got the point anyway.
Yeah. Oh, my goodness.
I know we're probably coming close to our end of our time. I would love a couple things that I would love to hear, and I don't know if we just need to save it for another time, but usually life on the field isn't all laugh, right? And there's some difficult things. You guys are in member care now, and I'm sure that there's some reasons for that. My question for you that I'd love to get is, what is something that you learned on the field that you wish you would have known before going? But I'm also curious to know if maybe there's something that just life's difficulties that maybe it's the same answer. I don't know. But those two things I think are some things I'd love to hear from you guys.
I think for me, I didn't realize the challenge of educating your kids, and it's a lot easier now than it was when we went. There's a lot more available, online and stuff like. We didn't have computers, and so I did educate the kids for the first few years. It also, a lot of people they don't want to go because they have little kids, and they think, well, it'll be better someday. Actually, the younger your children are, it seems usually the easier it is for them to adapt. So having experience taking a 12-year-old, that's a hard time to make a move. And so he experienced more difficulties. I wish I had known to anticipate that, and to anticipate that our children experience, when we go through a lot of changes, we experience a grief. And with missionary life, and this is for business people as well, when you're always leaving somewhere and going somewhere else, whether it be leaving what you consider home now to go back to the States for 6 months or whatever, or it's coming back after, you're always saying goodbye to people. And there's a grief that goes with that. And we as adults deal with that differently than children do, and I wasn't aware of that. And so I think if I had known that then, I could have been a little more aware and helped my children handle that kind of grief. Yeah. And the older they are, I think the harder the adaptation is. And again, I wasn't really aware of a lot of that. And I wasn't aware of some of the struggles our son experienced until many, many years later. So, that depends on children and their personalities and all that. So it's a generalization in a way, but we all do experience that grief of constant change and constantly saying goodbye. So that's something I think we all need to be aware of when we take our children into a situation where we're constantly saying goodbye to people.
And that it is true, and that takes a toll on us, in one way or another, whether we're aware of it initially or not, it takes a toll on us, those kind of changes. And, we were just completely clueless about that. And so was everybody else that we knew. Yeah. All the other missionaries. So it wasn't something that was generally known or talked about. And the thing with the kids, we had no preparation for that really. And again, it was just like, you just dealt with it. You just dealt with what it was. But it would have been very helpful on that. And learning from some others kind of things. two things that initially come to mind was, and then this is from more of others' experience that we were close to, and one of them is make sure that both spouses, if it's husband and wife, make sure both spouses are in agreement for where you're going, because we saw that and the devastating effects of that. One family very close to us for a long time, in that they were not, and it just affected so much of things. And the other thing, and it was something that I don't know. God was very gracious, but it's to go as a learner, and we sort of talked about that at different times. But to really be there and to learn from those that are around you, the ones that are in the culture, the ministry partners that you're with, whoever that might be, but learn from them, and not to immediately come in there with the answers to things, because we saw again how that doesn't build the best relationships with everybody, to say the least, and it also can really cause some real problems, short term and long term. With really just the propagation of the gospel. Long term, no problem that way. So those are some of the things.
And also being aware that you really have to learn the local language.
Yeah.
If you don't, you can't understand the culture at all.
Yeah.
It all goes hand in hand. And so that's one of the things we emphasize now at Globe is you have to have that language. Yeah. It doesn't matter if you can operate in English, but if you don't speak their language, you're missing something of their culture.
Right.
Learning that heart language, whatever that is.
Yeah.
If you guys were to look back and just say, oh, this is what I just loved about being on the field, or even about what you're doing right now, could you say that there's something there that you'd say, oh, this was
some aspect that stands out?
Yeah, that you just really enjoyed, that was so fun for you as far as being...
I think it's all in relationship. And I think there's enough of a pastoral bent for us that's what we enjoy. We enjoy coming alongside of people. We enjoy relating. We enjoy encouraging people and kind of lifting them up when they're feeling down, and just kind of, I don't know, I think pastoring, it actually goes back to kind of a pastoring, and that's what, at least for me, I enjoy that, walking alongside especially the younger ones. And even though sometimes it can be quite challenging and frustrating, but at the same time, you rejoice when you see, their victories, and what they're doing and their passion and that kind of thing. That's for me. I don't know if you want to add anything.
No, I would agree that's it. I mean, when we first went out, as we shared, about the Institute and the teaching and all of that, I thought I was primarily a teacher, and I've done a lot of that, in different places. But I think that whole underlying thing there was the pastoral part of me and us, really, and the encouraging part of that, because that's really, honestly, after a long time, really seeing that's what feeds my fire, is to be able to to encourage and to see others really bloom and grow. And so that's where it is.
All right, well, I think that about wraps up our time. Thank you guys so much for coming, and all the way from North Carolina, right? South Carolina.
There's two Carolinas.
Really?
Don't mix them up.
My bad. Well, thank you guys, and it was so nice to talk to you guys.
Thank you.
Always a delight to be with you guys. Thank you for sharing the richness of your life with us.